The Republican Party didn't need to let Donald Trump into the GOP nominating race for president at all, yet they did. The GOP didn't need to let Donald Trump be installed as Republican presidential nominee 3 months ago in Cleveland, but they did. Every step of the way, the GOP could have stopped Trump, could have dumped Trump, but they didn't. And now here we are, less than a month from Election Day, and Donald Trump is burning down and taking the Republican Party along with it. The question at this point is it now too late to try to keep Congress and tell Trump to self-fund his campaign? Ian Tuttle at nationalreview.com this morning seems to think that it's at least worth a try, because the prospect of a third Clinton presidency and of Democrats in control on Capitol Hill is nightmarish. I mean, 2009 and 2010 wasn't all that long ago, was it? See, it's all about Congress now. Really, it's been all about Congress for the past 5 months, but I digress. By the way, in the current election .com projections, it's looking like a 50-50 Senate, which would give Democrats control, with Tim Kaine as the vice president and president of the Senate to cast tie-breaking votes. So the Democrats would wield the gavels in the Senate. The House right now, according to election projection, looks like the losses for the GOP will be limited to about a dozen seats, so the GOP would still have the majority in the House, so that would be at least somewhat of a bulwark. But the fallout from Pussygate may be catastrophic, especially with more to come where that came from. Now, last Friday evening, America discovered that Donald Trump is exactly the person everyone thought he was outside of the Trumpoid personality cult. It turns out that the same man who bragged about his adultery in his books advertised his affair with Marla Maples in the pages of New York City's tabloids and publicly lamented never having had the chance to seduce Princess Diana, once bragged about being a serial groper. Gee, who could have seen that coming? Other than everybody! You talk about an unforced error. That's what the Trump nomination is, and a fatal one. The fallout could accurately be described as catastrophic. More than 50 GOP federal office holders, including several who had previously endorsed him, called on Trump to drop out of the race. Notice 50 is a tiny minority of all GOP federal office holders. I mean, it really should have been 281 federal office holders, all 247 in the House and all 54 in the Senate. So 50 out of 247, that's what, a sixth? That's pathetic. Hugh Hewitt defected. Mike Cuck Pence and Kellyanne Conway vanished for nearly 48 hours. And when they returned, it was just not pretty. Rudy Giuliani was Trump's sole surrogate on Sunday morning shows, showing how loathsome he is. Fortunately for Trump, he staunched the bleeding at Sunday's debate in St. Louis to a degree with a full-scale offensive against Hillary Clinton. Perhaps the only person in the country who struggles with honesty match his own, and that was the purpose of it. I'm going to put you in jail. That was what that, like I said, it wasn't. And again, this is not difficult to see. If I can see it, anybody can see it if they choose to. But that was the purpose of it. Shore up his hemorrhaging base. Yesterday morning, Cuck Pence had emerged from his hidey hole tweeting, "Make America great again." Make America great again? I guess that's what this means. And dilating on the sexual transgressions of Bill Clinton, which are exactly the same as those of Donald Trump, and the odds of other Republicans abandoning Trump fell, which is why the GOP is doomed. But that's not good news, because it means the GOP is doomed and Trump has totally corrupted it, turned it into an adjunct of the Democrat Party. Traditionally, there's just one October surprise, but with Donald Trump, there's material enough for a surprise every day of the month and for the next 10 bleeping years. It's a matter of when, not if. Remember back in the spring when Democrats were saying, boy, we've still got 80%, we're still sitting on 80% of the Oppo research on Trump that hasn't been released yet, and we'll release it when the time is right. Well, welcome to that time, Trumplicans. And you have no excuse for not knowing this was coming. You knew who you were nominating. You knew who you were pushing. You knew all his vulnerabilities. You just did it anyway. I mean, this is a bed of your own making that you have shat and you have wet, and now you got to lie in it. And you have no grounds on which to criticize us for not wanting to lay down in the same shit. Sources who worked with Trump during his years on The Apprentice suggest there is much, much more where the Access Hollywood Pussygate tape came from. Does anybody really doubt this? Did anybody really doubt this? And I'll say it again, some of the same people who condemned Bill Clinton for his sexual transgressions are now celebrating the same thing coming from Donald Trump. What's the matter with you people? Shame on you. There is reportedly a recording of Trump using the N-word. That's, and I quote, nigger, for those of you in Marietta, California. And at Sunday's debate, Trump flatly denied that he actually did any groping. So how long until Trump is faced with his own Kathleen Wiley, Paula Jones, or Juanita Broderick? Hey, think about that for the third and final debate. I'm serious. Think about that for the third and final debate. Remember what he talked about yesterday in my debate review, second debate review? Yesterday, remember how the Trump campaign had those three women, those three Clinton accusers, front and center in the audience? You think that La Clinton Nostra isn't going to return the favor on Trump for the third debate? Come on, you know they will. You know they will. The La Clinton Nostra they're the dirtiest players in the game. That's exactly what they're going to do. There's not going to be anything left of Trump, and what any of this has to do with actually leading the country is anybody's guess. But that's what the voters wanted. You wanted entertainment. You didn't want governance. You didn't want responsible governance, responsible leadership. That's not what you wanted. You wanted to be entertained at a blistering bleep with the country. Trump's unyielding narcissism, abetted by Republicans, happy to toss aside decency and conservative principle for the chance of winning, has created a nightmare scenario for other GOP office seekers down ballot. Every day that Trump stays in the race is a day that swing voters flee to Hillary Clinton. But if Trump were to drop out, much of his support might well stay home. And in fact, Kelly Pearson, or is it Katrina Pearson? Yeah, Katrina Pearson, that Trump spokes bimbo. She was actually encouraging that, yes, on Twitter yesterday. Yeah, turn out and vote for Trump and screw the Republicans down the ballot for their disloyalty. You picture how stupid that is. That if you think that Trump is going to make all your dreams come true, if you think he's a conservative savior, what is he going to be able to do without a Congress? Oh, well, I'm sorry, I answered my own question here. He'll just use his pen and his phone, right? He'll rule by decree. He'll be your own dictator, your own Obama. What? Sorry, what? What am I thinking? Oh, you don't need Congress. You're just gonna your guy. You're gonna have your own dictator. That's what you think, isn't it? Just use the Obama precedent. I thought that was bad in and of itself, regardless of who does it. No, that's just tribalism. You Trumplicans don't have any problem with sexual immorality, sexual assault. You don't have any problem with liberalism. You don't have any problem with big government. You don't have any problem with feeding the Constitution through a paper shredder. You only have a problem if the other side does it. But it's perfectly okay if your side does it. If you get your own dictator, it's all about revenge for you people. It's not about principle. You don't believe in shit. That is how Donald Trump has corrupted the Republican Party by turning it into a clone of the Democrat Party. Except Democrats still control the game. The Democrats still control the media, which means Republicans will never be allowed to get away with being like the Democrats. The same thing that they get away with, you're never going to be allowed to. And Pussygate is the proof. What is the matter with so many of you people who they're supposed to be smarter than this? Guess you weren't. Just like you're supposed to be principled conservatives, and I guess you weren't. You want to win, but win for what? What purpose? What are you winning for? What do you want to do with your victory if you were ever to get it? Meanwhile, everyone is waiting for the next bomb to drop. Although I really kind of hope that La Clinton Nostra, for their sakes, from their point of view, it wouldn't be a good idea to just release one every day, because that you know how that works. People get numb to it after a while. It's like, oh, this again. Well, okay, we know all that. Well, you didn't know it before, even though you should have. I wouldn't release an avalanche of this stuff. I'd release it as needed. Certainly in the run-up to the second debate or the third debate, I'd release another one a few days before, just like this one was. And then I'd release a third one right before the election, the worst one of all. I mean, if you think that oh wow, he's just locker room talk, he just talk, you know. Think of it this way, Trumplicans. The Pussygate tape, the Access Hollywood tape, that's the least damaging stuff that they have. They're going to build up from there. Remember, La Clinton Nostra, dirtiest players in the game. They know how this game works, and apparently you have no idea. You've deluded yourself into thinking you could play this game and beat the Clintons at their own game. You people who should know this better than anybody have deluded yourselves into a corner. Now there's no way out. On Saturday, Reince Priebus reportedly told RNC staffers to do what's best for yourself, which is actually amazing. I mean, I don't know, why didn't he cut Ted Cruz this kind of slack a couple of weeks ago before he cuckolded him? Yesterday, on a call with his conference, House Speaker Paul Ryan told House Republicans to do the same. In other words, everybody for themselves! Instead of showing leadership and rejecting and dumping Trump, withdrawing his endorsement. That would have been leadership. Instead, it's just chaos, pandemonium, every man and woman for themselves. Yeah, that's, who knows? I don't know at this point. I mean, this, as Tuttle says here, this is what a rout looks like. Not a narrow loss, not a hard-fought loss, a blowout. And it hasn't manifested itself on election projection yet, but leadership would be dumping Trump. Leadership would be withdrawing your endorsement. Leadership would be saying, get rid of Trump. And it would have been that 3 months ago. Now it looks reactive. 3 months ago, it would have been proactive. And Trumplicans might even have been shameable, some of them anyway, into coming home behind, well, whoever the GOP leadership had substituted in Trump's place, forcibly. Call his bluff. Trump doesn't get the nomination. Cleveland's got to burn. Okay, bring it on. Bring it on, assholes. Call their bluff. I didn't do it. So now, dumping Trump now, I mean, it would look reactive rather than proactive. The time for leadership was 3 months ago, GOP. Where were you then? Yeah, we know where you were. It'd be pornographic to even describe. For whatever is left of the institutional Republican Party, and it ain't much, expending resources to aid Donald Trump would be a grievous mistake. Perhaps a cataclysmic mistake, or revelation damages Hillary Clinton fatally. What could emerge about Hillary Clinton at this stage of the game that would fit that description? What? Finding a mound of finding out that she's the 21st century Lizzie Borden, that she secretly went out and axe murdered a bunch of people. Might that do it? What could come out about Hillary Clinton at this late date that would be cataclysmic, or that would damage her fatally? Look at this campaign. Look at what we know about already. That hasn't damaged her fatally, thanks to Donald Trump. So, if you're going to talk about something game-changing like that, Hillary Clinton having a stroke or just dropping dead, that would be game-changing. But that's the only thing I could conceive of that would fit that description. Otherwise, forget it. There's no way Trump can win unless Hillary dies. And maybe even then. Don't underestimate public sympathy, rallying around Tim Kaine and carrying on the torch and blah, blah, blah. I mean, this doesn't even work as a hypothetical. There's no way, well, there was never any way Trump could win, but there sure as hell isn't now. I mean, Trump has bragged, and here's the point, Trump has bragged about his ability to self-fund. Well, he should be left to do so now. You said you were going to self-fund. Now back it up, pal. You're high energy, time to prove it. Not that he will, and not that he'll have to. Not that the RNC will force him to. At this late point, with Trump likelier than not to be not just likelier, with Trump damaged even further, way beyond repair, every remaining resource, every nickel and dime, every college Republican volunteer, etc., should be applied toward holding the Senate and House, but they won't be. They'll all be poured into the Trump campaign. I mean, Hillary Clinton is going to win by a wide margin next month. It need never have happened. There are no other circumstances under which it could have happened. But Trumplicans chose those circumstances, and now it's going to happen, and they're the ones responsible. And when she does win by a wide margin, guess what that will enable her to claim? A mandate. She will have gotten elected not because of herself. She will not have gotten elected because of anything, any platform, any issue on which she ran. She will get elected because she wasn't Donald Trump. But that's not how she'll spin it. That's not how the media will spin it. They will move on from Trump. They will proclaim Hillary Clinton has won a huge victory for mankind and womankind and women's rights and blah, blah, whatever. They will move on from Trump. They will forget, in the context of Hillary Clinton and the Democrats, in that context, they'll forget about Trump. They will hang Trump around Republican necks for decades to come. But in terms of Hillary Clinton and the mandate, they won't tell the truth that her mandate was not being Donald Trump. Her mandate will be whatever they want it to be, for whatever they want it to be, because she will have won by a wide margin. Now, it ought to be Republicans' most urgent priority to keep hold of the one institutional check on her power, to prevent the single-payer health care program she's going to try to ram through, to prevent the resurrection of cap and trade, which actually is already in place because Barack Obama did it via executive order through the EPA, to block the appointment of the extremist masquerading as judge that she promised Sunday night to appoint to the Supreme Court, to prevent, in a word, another 2009 or worse. That should be the Republicans' urgent priority. Will it be? Is it? No, because they are still beholden to Trump. It's all about Trump. It's not about the GOP. It's all about Trump. It's not about Republican congressional majorities. It's all about Trump. It's not about Republican governors across the country. It's all about Trump. It's not about Republican state legislatures across the country. It's all about Trump. Not about conservatism. Not about America. All about Trump. And Trump's going to lose badly. And if Republicans do not, even at this late date, who knows what might still be salvageable, but if they don't focus on that, they're going to lose their congressional majorities. I mean, losing the Senate is practically guaranteed. Losing the House would really take some effort, but they might just be capable of doing it. And then Trump's going to lose as well. And then where are we? Right back in fucking 2009 again. Great job, Trumplicans. Congratulations. I mean, the prospect of a third Clinton presidency is grim. The prospect of a Clinton presidency, a third Clinton presidency, accompanied by a Democrat Congress is nightmarish. But that's what Trumplicans have wanted all along. That's what they've worked for all along. They wanted to burn down the Republican Party, and now they're on the cusp, the very threshold of getting their fondest wish. And that's why I'm not in a forgiving mood, and will never be, ever. until there's some repentance on their part. I mean, if Donald Trump wants to steer the Trump train,
come on! Nice and easy! Don't look down! That's it! You're doing fine!
not just off the tracks, but off the cliff. No, it's not fine, but, well, it's too late now. But Republicans shouldn't let him take the country and the party down with him. But, you know, those inconvenient truths, those hard truths to which we have to come to grips, with which we have to come to grips, he already has. Caleb Howe at Red State this morning points out another inconvenient and unfortunate and brutal reality, which is that the very fact that Paul Ryan will not disavow Donald Trump tells us all we need to know about the real relationship between the GOP and its New York liberal conman hostile conqueror. Now, yesterday, there were a lot of conference calls among Republicans. Reince Priebus's call got the most reporting, and in it, he attempted to tamp down any fears or concerns that the party was looking to dump Trump, which is the diametric opposite of what he should have been doing, which was dumping Trump. Priebus, as he does, did his best to make it sound like everything is fine in the party and with the nominee. I like to teach the world to sing in perfect harmony. And when they're done with all of that, let's go grab some pussy. But the other big call, the one Speaker Ryan held with House Republicans, tells you how things are really going. Not just in the relationship with lawmakers and the nominee, but in Trump's relationship to base voters. Jake Tapper tweeted out, Speaker Ryan to GOP, drop Trump endorsement if need be, but God forbid that Paul Ryan should take the lead in that effort. Do what you have to do for your district. Every man and woman for himself. The route is on. I mean, that's very telling. It's not a matter of his saying, do what you must for your political future, or kowtowing to liberal media demands. He's talking about what real voters think. The people who will decide on whether these guys are reelected, guys and gals. He's saying that you can unendorse or denounce if that is what the district that you represent believes is right and you agree with them, rather than taking a stand. Saying Trump is wrong, Trump is the enemy, Trump is destroying the Republican Party, Trump is getting Hillary Clinton elected, Trump is leading a Democrat, man, it's not even a restoration, it's a Democrat maintenance of power. Here's a quote from Bloomberg on the subject. Ryan broke ranks with the Republican National Chairman and Trump's own running mate on yesterday, to declare that he was effectively disavowing his party's presidential nominee. And he's not disavowing him. He's just not going to campaign with him. He hasn't disavowed jack shit. He's still voting for him. He's still saying vote Trump. Ryan hasn't withdrawn his endorsement. Telling Republicans running for the House and Senate to do whatever they need to do to win, even if it means rejecting Trump, but God forbid he should take the lead in that effort, set the example to follow. That will be leadership. You all need to do what's best for you in your district, Ryan of Wisconsin told House Republicans, according to a person who was on a GOP conference call. The move foreshadows what's expected to be a titanic battle for the direction of the party. when Trump loses. And no doubt, but at least after Trump has lost, conservatives will have a chance to take the party back. There would be no such hope if Trump won. Polls show 2/3 of Republican voters are still standing with Trump despite his vulgar comments about his criminal actions toward women, putting Ryan and other Trump defectors at odds with, Ryan is not a Trump defector, at odds with the mainstream of the party. Well, the mainstream of the party is wrong. And a leader would stand up and say so, and say, no, you're all wrong. I'm taking a stand. Here's why. I still stand for something. Even though 2/3 of this party doesn't anymore, I still do. That would be leadership. Not this every man for yourself, do what you got to do or whatever. Don't. We've never been here before. This kind of crisis, said Curly Haugland, a longtime Republican Party activist from North Dakota, former member of the National Committee, and charter never-Trumper. There is a more immediate concern. Once confident Republicans now fear they could lose control of the Senate and see their House majority shrink, well, that's already in the cards, as GOP candidates pay the price for Trump. You see, all is not well in the House GOP. Remember how many politicians spoke out over the weekend to say enough is enough with Trump, a.k.a. far too few of them? That doesn't go away because of a marginally improved debate performance against a terrible opponent. And let's talk about that opponent for a moment. Stop Hillary! As the rallying cry for Trump voters, which has always been a fraud. I'll say it again and again and again. Trumpmania was never about stopping Hillary. Trumpmania was never about keeping the Democrats out of the White House for a third consecutive term. Trumpmania was never about winning the 2016 election. It was always about burning down the Republican Party. Which is why the Stop Hillary slogan is ringing more hollow every day. Even in the context of a Trump victory, which is never going to happen, but what good would a Trump presidency with no Congress or Senate to support him be? To support his nominees? Well, Democrats will help him with that. To support his agenda? Well, that'll pretty much be the Democrat agenda. So I guess maybe that's the thinking. They don't need Republicans because they're not going to pursue a Republican agenda. Or they wouldn't if Trump were to win. I mean, that's a pretty major argument Trumplicans make that is now totally out the window. But then it never was inside the window to begin with. What's more, the idea that Trump is easily going to beat Hillary has always been a fantasy. It's never had any polling data backing it up. Ever. It's so much of a fantasy that his surrogates keep referring to invisible voters too scared to say they support him. Oh, really? Shrinking violet Trumplicans? Like jumbo shrimp, right? Ain't no such thing. And there is no silent majority. That was always a fraud. That was a fraud back in the Nixon years when Spiro Agnew coined the term. There was never a silent majority. You want to know what percentage of the vote Richard Nixon won in 1968? 43%. He didn't get a majority until 1972, and that was because he was running against a communist. And back then, that was a bad thing. Today, it's mainstream, but still think the country is majority conservative, Doug? His supporters, Trump supporters, brag about the size of his rallies, just like the size of his fingers, I guess. Which is like arguing today's local weather explains the global climate. The facts are that Trump is being obliterated in national polling. He's 7 points down in the Rasmussen poll, 6 points down in, according to YouGov, 14 points down in the NBC Wall Street Journal poll in a two-way race. And 10 points down when you figure in Jill Stein and Gary Feel the Johnson into the mix. All of this was just since Pussygate. I mean, what is this, the fourth day since Pussygate erupted? You know, it is an unmitigated disaster. Trump's campaign is done. It is burning to the ground. It is ashes. His electoral college prospects. Currently, ejection projection has him losing 351 to 187. All the electoral college ground that he gained in September, totally pissed away. He's back where he started before Labor Day. And it's going to get worse. He's losing North Carolina, which Hillary has flipped North Carolina, and she's flipped Arizona. Texas is considered a swing state now. She'll probably get Georgia back too. I mean, we could be looking at Hillary Clinton going over 400 electoral votes. Solely and entirely because of not Never Trump, not the media, because of Donald Trump. And what are his big thinker apologists doing about any of this? Whining about us. Whining about Never Trump, that supposedly dead, piddling, insignificant, little teeny tiny bitter ender sect that somehow still could single-handedly make the difference in putting Trump over the top. Again, it can't be both. Pick. And I've never had any illusions. I've never had any illusions about the fact that Never Trump is not that big. I understand the centrifugal pull of partisan tribalism. And that doesn't say much for partisan tribalism, does it? The Trumplicans aren't doing anything to prop Trump up to actually help him. If they were going to help him, they tell him to get the bleep out of the race. They're doing nothing to increase his appeal to undecideds or to people who are considering third-party votes. Telling Hillary Clinton to her face, "I'm going to put you in jail," is not the way to do that. Remember, you can't take politics personally because it leads you to do stupid, emotional things. Not to be redundant. No, Trumplicans are just whimpering that Republicans are being mean to them. A small minority of Republicans. Well, I'll take that back. They're not just whimpering. Trumplicans are out organizing protests against the Republican National Committee. Like that asshole, I can't remember his name, in Virginia, Trump's Virginia party chair did yesterday. And texting his campaign to brag that they aren't going to support any Republicans down the ballot. This is about the GOP. This is not about conservatism. It's not about the country. It's all about Trump and nothing else. And in that, Trumplicans have completely taken on the orange, corrosive, disgusting, despicable sheen and lack of character of their dear leader. Now, that is not the happy and friendly relationship that Cuck Pence and Priebus are trying to sell the country, defraud the country. The relationship is a mess and complicated, although it shouldn't be. dump Trump. How complicated is that? With some abandoning Trump in favor of long-held conservative principles. Better too late than never, I suppose. See, that's all I require, from my point of view. Just admit you were wrong and come home. Not that I'm going to trust any of you people who did ever again, but you have a long way to go before you would ever recover my respect. But repentance is the first step, and repentance is a prerequisite to forgiveness. But some are digging in even harder, Trumplicans that is, on the flimsy basis that they must prove to the establishment which is on their side. I don't even know what they're talking about anymore. Well, they never did, but now, I mean, it's totally incoherent. That party leaders are not in charge and you're not the boss of me. Well, somebody needs to be the boss of you because you people cannot be trusted. You people, you need supervision. A great deal of it. Because look what you've done to the party. Look what you've done to the movement. You people are not competent to be left unsupervised. Somebody does need to be the boss of you people. That illusion of unity and common purpose isn't even one that Trump himself is pitching. I guess, well, his tweets are still attacking Republicans. I'm not saying other Republicans because Trump isn't a Republican. But that's what he does. He's in his element. He's attacking Republicans. He loves it, as any Democrat does. He's threatening GOPers that are up for re-election that he'll punish them and publish oppo, in other words, smear them, if they don't support it. Boy, does that not sound like a Democrat? A donk saboteur. This is not the behavior of a standard bearer. This is not the behavior of a leader. This is not the behavior of the nominee. It is the act of the head of a hostile takeover, a conqueror. And the Trump junta is not forming. It's already there, entrenched. Do you think Trump's going to go away after the election, after he loses 400 electoral votes or more to Hillary Clinton? Do you think Trump's going to go away? He's not going away. He's not going to abandon the Republican Party. He's still going to run the Republican Party. He's not going to abandon this following. He's not going to abandon all this chance at being worshipped like a god. He's going to keep that gravy train rolling. It's Trump's party. I mean, why would he abandon that? If the idea is to destroy the Republican Party and keep it destroyed, why would he go anywhere? He's going to stay in it. He's going to stay in control of it. All the better and the easier for the media to bury the Republican Party for good. You think there's going to be any Republican Party to speak of in 2020? No, there's not going to be any grand reconciliation. There's not going to be any coming home. There's not going to be any repentance. This party is done. This party is split down the middle. No, it's not even down the middle. 2/3 of it have followed after Trump. This party is, the vast majority of the Republican Party now no longer stands for anything. The vast majority of the Republican Party has calculatedly and deliberately and knowingly abandoned conservatism, abandoned conservative values, and they're not going to go anywhere. And they're not going to change their minds. They're not going to repent. They're not going to admit they were wrong. Because evidence doesn't evidence doesn't convince these people. They ignore it. They just make shit up. So November 8th, after November 8th, the nightmare won't be over. The nightmare will just have begun. Because Hillary Clinton will be president, the Democrats will have the Senate, at the very least, to go with her. And the Republican Party will remain at war with itself, completely neutralized, completely ineffective, split, riven permanently, never to reform or recoalesce again. Conservatism will be in the wilderness permanently. It's like 1932 all over again, in that sense as well as in the sense that Trump will be hung around the necks of the GOP for the next 50 years, just like Herbert Hoover was in the last century. I mean, the profound lack of interest in how government will operate after November, the absolute indifference of Trump's campaign and his voters for whether Democrats or Republicans will be running the show in January, ought to be very worrying. I mean, it should worry so-called reluctant Trump voters, I don't think there's any such thing, who claim that they want to stop a Hillary agenda with a candidate who is just like her. It's personal vendetta. It's not about principle, not about ideas. It's a personal vendetta because you cannot stop one liberal Democrat with another liberal Democrat. And when there's no difference between the two, what other motivation could there be but that it was a personal vendetta? And of course, like I say, Trumplicans aren't worried. They're too busy explaining to everyone that bragging about pursuing a married woman and grabbing strangers' crotches is just kind of what dudes are like. They're not, but I guess that's what we're all supposed to be now. We're all supposed to be lechers. We're all supposed to be sexual predators, just like the feminists have screeched for years. To actually consider the consequences for the country. Remember the country? Remember America! Bleep, yeah! Well, so much for the country. So much for restoring the Republic. So much for the Constitution. So much for the Supreme Court. So much for conservatism. And Trumplicans are way too caught up in defending their disastrous, emotive, anger-obsessed choice to support him to actually do what's best for the country, much less the party. Trump is not winning. Trump is losing big time. But even if he were to miraculously win, it would be at the expense of Republican power in Congress. What argument do you have to offer that makes that okay? What is your justification, Rush Limbaugh? That you're sticking it to the political correctness gods? You're really not. That you're teaching the party a lesson, that you forfeited everything the party ever stood for? The answer is there isn't one. You're not teaching the party a lesson because the lesson that is being taught is one that you people will never accept because you're the ones that need to learn that lesson. As we said before, this is all about revenge and exerting some illusory power. And in exchange, there is nothing ahead but grim, bleak, Democrat rule. Nice job, assholes. Susan Wright weighed in on this cluster bleep Red State this morning as well, so let's share her thoughts along the same lines before we close this video, because this is a disaster in the making. And one the RNC brought on itself by not using every available avenue early on in order to derail the inevitable Trump implosion. Well, we talked about Paul Ryan telling his Republican House majority, not showing any leadership, just saying, do what you got to do, whatever. Well, Mitch McConnell over on the Senate side has basically done the same thing. Let's see, from thehill.com comes the quote. Senate Majority Leader Mitchie the Kid McConnell is advising Republican senators to use their own game plans to deal with a possible collapse of GOP presidential possible to deal with the collapse of GOP presidential nominee Donald Trump's campaign. You know, it's much easier to nationalize elections than it is to denationalize them. I mean, the days when all politics were local, that's very difficult to do anymore. It's much easier to nationalize than denationalize elections. And Ryan and McConnell are trying to turn back the clock like that were possible in the era of instant communication and social media and the internet and YouTube and the like. McConnell is telling vulnerable GOP senators to focus on their own states and races and avoid getting swept up in the controversy swirling around Trump, GOP sources say, like the Democrats will allow that. As if. We're advising the same thing we have all along. Run your own race. That has put us in the good position we're in overall. Well, what, you mean last cycle? This cycle's a different cycle there, Mitchie. Everybody is listening to people in their state, said its Senate GOP aide. Yeah, well, lots of luck to you, I guess. But see, with early voting already open in many states and Hillary Clinton sprinting past Trump to a double-digit lead in most polls, election projection now is projecting a 6-point popular vote victory for Hillary Clinton, above 50%. I mean, now, how much of a fallout that has in the Electoral College to add to her already 351 to 187 projected Electoral College lead? Couldn't even, I don't even want to contemplate it, frankly. The fear is that having that R as a common link between Trump and candidates battling for position in down-ballot races may be more of a factor in whether those candidates are victorious than their actual records. I mean, the Ryan and McConnell can try to feebly denationalize elections at the congressional level. Do you seriously believe that Democrats are going to let them do that? You seriously believe the Democrats are not going to try to nationalize every local race, all the way down from Senate to House to statewide elections, governor, et cetera, statewide offices, all the way down to dog catcher and county sewage commissioner or whatever? Democrats are going to nationalize the hell out of this. Donald Trump is the gift that keeps on giving. Donald Trump is the only way that Hillary Clinton, and will be the only reason that Hillary Clinton becomes 45th president of the United States. There's no way Republicans can denationalize this. It doesn't work that way. You nominate your candidate for president, he's the face of your party. He's the brand of your party. He is, if you're a Republican, Donald Trump is your guy. The only way to get out from underneath Trump, well, even back in July, there really was no way to get out from underneath Trump, but at least there was still a theoretical chance then. Now, well, sure, I mean, if they could force Trump out, the Democrats would... the Democrats wouldn't let them get away with that. They'd still hang Trump around the necks of every Republican across the country because the Republican Party nominated Trump. Even if they tried to dump him after the fact, and the media certainly wouldn't cooperate. I mean, for Republicans, there is no, nor could there ever be any Torricelli solution. The reference to 14 years ago when Robert Torricelli was running for re-election to the Senate, and then a salacious scandal came out, and then the Democrats gave him the hook and substituted, Frank Lautenberg, brought him out of retirement to run in Torricelli's place. But the media cooperated in that as well, don't forget, as well as the New Jersey courts, but that's getting too far into the weeds. The point is, the media would never let the Republicans get away with that. Even if Trump stepped down, the Democrats would still be hanging Trump around every Republican across the country to great effect. So in other words, the majority held by Republicans in the House, as well as gubernatorial races, may be threatened, are threatened by that association, and that association is entirely reasonable. Democrats did not force Republicans to nominate Donald Trump. Democrats didn't do that. The media didn't do that. I mean, they had a hand in facilitating it, but then they always do. They always try to force their candidate, the weakest possible candidate, on the Republican Party every 4 years. They hit the jackpot this time, but nobody made Republicans do that. Totally self-inflicted, fatal, sucking wound. GOP has committed seppuku. Did it to themselves. Nobody did it to them. Nobody made them embrace Trump. Now, the party's strategy that should begin and end with defeating Democrats has been tripped up by allowing Trump to grab the top spot. You know my frustration with Tea Partiers over the last few years, that they don't attack Democrats, they attack their own party. Lead by example. If you thought that the Republican establishment, the GOP, wasn't going after the Democrats to your satisfaction, lead by example. Do it yourselves. No, all you did was use that as a pretext for burning down your own party. I'll tell you what, the Tea Party, my maybe current, maybe still, maybe former friend Douglas V. Gibbs used to say for years, the Tea Party's not trying to burn down the party, they're trying to save it. Well, bullshit. Because most Tea Partiers signed on with Trump, followed after Trump, became his Kool-Aid drinking zombie cultists. Several senators, such as Rob Portman and Kelly Ayotte, have already condemned Trump for the 2005 hot mic statements, but haven't withdrawn their endorsements, making their condemnations empty. Put actions behind them and they'll have some credibility. I mean, so many Republicans, rather than working their way free, and there's a real simple way to do it, I'm against Trump. Trump needs to get out. Instead, they're just muddling the message and coming out of his mealy mouth. No reason to ever listen to them again. Anything they say. I mean, they've only entangled themselves worse. I mean, it's better to not say anything than to come out and condemn comments, but not back them up with the action of withdrawing endorsements. You withdraw an endorsement and you take a stand against Trump and say, dump Trump, that gives your condemnation weight. If you don't do that, if you're still going to vote for the man, well, then what the hell? Just shut up. They'd be better off saying nothing than pretending to condemn Trump's actions, but not backing it up with any meaningful actions of their own. And how pathetic is Ted Cruz, folks? How pathetic is he? I mean, he reserved any comment until days after the news broke and then reaffirmed his support. He should have just stayed silent. Should have just shut up. If you're not gonna withdraw your support, then just keep your mouth shut. What have you got to say? What's the point of condemning the comments if you don't withdraw your support? Otherwise, it's meaningless. See, this is what lying in the bed that you short-sheeted for yourself, this is how it actually unfolds. This is the reality of it. And having the courage to just get out of that short-sheeted bed and admit you were wrong and take a stand. What was that expression from the previous video? There's no greater freedom than having nothing to lose. An NBC poll indicates that at this point the public is beginning to trust Democrats more than Republicans to lead the House of Representatives. That same NBC News Wall Street Journal poll that had Hillary Clinton 14 points ahead of Donald Trump, I think it's 52-38, and 10 points up in a four-way race with throwing in Gary Field Johnson and Jill Stein, the Stalinist candidate. Here's the quote. That same poll found that 49% of voters favor a Democrat-controlled Congress. 42% want the GOP to remain in charge. A 7-point advantage for Democrats on the so-called generic ballot question. Democrats only had a 3-point advantage a month ago. Republicans are more worried about Trump costing them control of the Senate, where the party is defending 24 seats to the Democrats' 10. If Democrats pick up 4 seats, and Mrs. Clinton wins the White House, Senator Chuck Schumer of New York would be majority leader next year. Women and college-educated white voters tend to be those most repulsed by Trump and his poisoned rhetoric, and what do you know? I'm a college-educated white voter. And Doug isn't college educated. Maybe that helps explain a few things, demographically speaking. Having Trump as the head of the ticket makes it nearly impossible for Republicans to, not nearly impossible, totally impossible for Republicans to claim the high ground on issues of tolerance, decency, or really anything. Anything. And this quote, I'm telling you, remember how I just said Democrats will never stop strangling every single Republican candidate in this cycle, at each cycle to come with Donald Trump? Listen to this quote. What will it take for Republicans to walk away from Trump? Senate Democrat leader, or Senate Minority Leader Dirty Harry Greed asked. What is it going to take for Republicans to discover even the barest modicum of decency and respect? House Minority Leader Crazy Nancy Pelosi told CNN Sunday night that there's not a dime's worth of difference between Trump and congressional Republicans when it comes to policy and tolerating intolerance. Now, I know. That is a breathtakingly nauseating level of hypocrisy. Those are two, in the persons of Dirty Harry Greed and Crazy Nancy Pelosi, those are two of the most loathsome people on the planet. But nobody ever said that they lacked for guile. And they don't. I mean, this is greed. This is and Pelosi. This is Dirty Harry and Crazy Nancy. So their statements are to be viewed through the prism of extreme partisanship. But the worst point of all, the bitterest truth, is that they have a point. A point Trumplicans handed them gift wrapped on a silver platter with a big dollop of whipped cream and a cherry on top. There is no way to strain anything resembling virtue from Trump's divisive statements, and his lies, and certainly not from his remarks about women and the privilege he feels afforded to men of star status to be sexual predators. Bill Clinton could get away with that because he's a Democrat. Donald Trump got away with it for years. Why? Because he's a Democrat. As soon as he started posing as a Republican, all of a sudden he can't get away with it anymore. That's not fair! Well, life isn't fair. Of course it's not fair. It's the reality. It's the reality in which we have to live. We can't take shortcuts. We don't get our own messiahs and dictators, and why would we want them? We're against such things, or at least we used to be. You wanted a dictator who could never get where you wanted him to go, Trumplicans. Why do you think I say that by supporting Trump, you're really supporting Hillary? Is this not the proof? It's a balancing act, I suppose, for Republican leaders seeking re-election in November if they're not going to actually exercise any true leadership. Do they gamble that a stand on principle and decency will gain them enough respect from voters to win, or do they stand with the raging Trumpster cult who have shown so little to no concern for preserving the down ballot and an absolute willingness to destroy anyone who is not one of them? Not a Trump zombie. It's a hard situation, one that should have been averted far, long before this. But I'll tell you what you do in situations like that. Catch-22s, Kobayashi Maru scenarios. You do the right thing. And the right thing is dumping Trump.